Okay, good morning. This is Pete McGilvery with the Office of Environmental Management. I am the State Environmental Quality and Performance Administrator. When everybody came in, we put you all on mute. And while everybody is on mute, if you have any questions, please just type them into the chat. Another thing is that if there are multiple folks attending from the same location, please make sure that you type in all their names as well so that we can make sure everybody gets credit for the classes today. The class that we're teaching for you guys is going to be a SWEPT overview. It's for District 6. We answered some pre-training questions and forwarded it back to the team. But as we go through the training, just type questions in and we'll pause, we'll answer those questions to let you guys make sure you get all the answers that you need today. I'm joined today by Mike Konikoff. He is the lead programmer on our team here. He's also half of the help desk, so when you call SWEPT support or send an email to SWEPT support, he's one of the individuals that mans the help desk up here in the central office. We have a lot of material that we're going to cover today. Let me generally show you guys the agenda. We're going to do a SWEPT overview, so we're going to give some details about SWEPT itself. We'll talk about its functionality, why we've got it, why we pulled it together. We'll give you an overview of the environmental document review process. We'll pull up some of the quick guides that we've developed to show you guys how to perform certain functions, like how do you request access, how does the environmental document review process, how does it work with ERC, how does it work with the environmental document submittals, which you'll see a little bit later. We'll do a short demonstration today on Type 1 categorical exclusions. And just up front, the reason I say a short demonstration on Type 1s is because, as the districts are aware, we are actively updating the Type 1 form. It should be rolling out to production in the next few weeks. When we do roll out the new form, we'll schedule a quick webinar and give an overview of the functionality of that new and updated Type 1 based on the district's comments and reviews and the implementation within the SWEPT environment. So we won't spend too much time on the Type 1 in this particular training because we'll have a more inclusive training to follow, but we will show you the basics and how the form works today. We'll show you how to complete an environmental certification, and we'll focus on creating a new Type 2 categorical exclusion, as well as how you complete reevaluations in SWEPT. We don't go into a lot of the EAs or the EISs because as you go through SWEPT and you start to see how the various functions work, it's really the same overview, the same technique, the same review of projects, the same type of activities that you do on these other documents that they just roll over and carry into performing these other functions on these higher level documents. So let's talk about SWEPT. Let's talk about some of the key features. SWEPT is the statewide environmental project tracker. It's the one-stop shop centralized repository of information that was developed. A lot of things that it was intended to do are completed in other systems, or in districts do it in numerous local ways. And when we did our statewide preparedness assessment to see how everybody was doing things, we found that everybody was doing a great job. They just happened to be all doing it differently, how things were stored, how things were managed, how the project file was attributed and accessible to other people, how things were being pulled together. And through NEPA assignment, it became important to be able to pull all of these great initiatives into a single interface so that we could have a consistent look and feel to our project files, our naming conventions, our document storage. SWEPT is considered one of the department's paperless initiatives as we basically turned a lot of our paper forms into electronic forms. that allow them to be developed online in a web-based environment and then electronically routed through each of the appropriate approvals and signatures along the way. Part of it is also designed to work and pull in the environmental project schedules. So the districts working through their Primavera schedulers develop a project schedule. That project schedule in Primavera is uploaded into the project schedule and management system, PSM. They will use the 700 series of environmental codes, and based on that Primavera schedule gets uploaded into PSM, and every night SWEP gets a dump of PSM looking for the appropriate FMs and the various project schedules. So you have this dashboard interface that allows you to see the various milestones per class of action for each of these documents, to know when certain reviews are anticipated or approvals are anticipated or activities to be completed. That becomes important because part of the NEPA assignment requirements are we have to, kind of focusing on those last few bullets, we've got to be able to perform self-assessment of ourselves and whether or not we're performing the activities that we agreed upon within the memorandum of understanding between us and FHWA, that we've meeting environmental laws, that we've got documented compliance, that we're have QA/QC processes in place, that we have developed performance measures, and that our environmental documents are up to snuff. Because of those requirements, we have to annually perform a self-assessment. We should have had a kickoff meeting for the self-assessment yesterday afternoon, but the Burns building shut down because the AC was closed, so we pushed that kickoff meeting to next Monday, where we will identify the focus of this year's self-assessment. What records are we going to look at? What focus topics are we going to investigate? And then we're required to develop a self-summary report that then gets shared with FHWA to support their annual audit for the first 4 years while we're under NEPA assignment. So having all of those environmental documents and approvals and all the supporting files in one system where anybody can access from anywhere and see all of the records at one time without having to leave and go into these other systems was really important and one of the main reasons for the development of SWEP. There's also within that MOU, there's quality and performance measures we have to keep up and maintain. So again, having everything in one system so that we know how long it's taking to process documents. One of the requirements in the MOU is, are we doing things faster as a state with NEPA assignment versus when we were working with FHWA in the approval and review of environmental documents? Are those documents moving from the start to the document approval faster under NEPA assignment? We've got to be able to track that information, report on that information. Again, that goes back to the schedules. That's why those are important, and those performance management results, and why that's important as well. There's also been a recent release of the integration of the PD&E scopes of service. We've provided separate training going over those activities. Those trainings are available online. I'll show you a location where you can get to all of them, as well as they're uploaded in SWEP as well under training videos, and we'll show you where all of those various resources are. So who are the folks that interact with SWEP? Who's the user community? And the way to think about it is, it's the district environmental offices, however they're organized, so that highest level environmental administrators, the environmental managers, the project development managers. Then we look at the district project managers. These could be design project managers, it could be PD&E project managers, and then the team members, the individuals They could be internal staff, maybe they're your environmental specialists, or maybe they're your consultants that you have on a GEC contract, or providing project-specific support. Because SWEPT is a web-based application, it's also roles-based. So how you get access to the site is you work through this district environmental management leadership, and they identify an appropriate role for you to have. But I guess the reason I bring that up is that it doesn't matter if you're a DOT employee or you're a consultant. It really comes down to, have you been assigned a specific role to work within the SWEPT environment? And there are some roles that do require that you are a DOT employee. So anytime you would actually have to have an approval on a document itself, that approval authority resides with an FDOT employee, and they can delegate it if they're going to be out, say they're going to be on vacation for a couple of weeks or something. They can delegate that authority down to someone else, but when you delegate that authority, it also still must go down to an FDOT employee. With that, there's other folks, part of the OEM structure up here. We have what are called project delivery coordinators. Those are known as the district liaisons. We have leads and backups that work in our office. They're part of the project reviews and approval process. We have the environmental program administrators, environmental program managers, so that's like the Javiers and the Margies up here, that are reviewing the documents and providing their recommendation to our director, Jason Watts, the director of the Office of Environmental Management, where everybody through this electronic review process within SWEPT are ultimately making recommendations to Jason on whether or not he should feel comfortable enough to sign that particular document. We also have that quality assurance and quality control staff. Eric Whitehead is our quality assurance and quality control coordinator. He works for me up here in the office. He is the one that's heading off the self-assessment work and pulling together the team as we have to complete those various activities. And he's also the FHWA audit support coordinator. And then we also have the environmental document reviewing attorneys, whether they're just part of the team and completing legal reviews on specific projects as they move throughout the process, or whether or not there are specific documents that require legal sufficiency. Legal sufficiency is a very formal act where an attorney must actually review all the materials associated with a particular project, and then they make a determination whether the project file as they've reviewed is legally sufficient. For that work to occur, it really comes down to two categories. Environmental impact statements, EISs, all require legal sufficiency, and if there is an individual 4F determination on a document. So if it's an EA but it has an individual 4F, that will still require legal sufficiency determination by the legal team. So those are the folks that interact with SWEPT. And then requesting access, I touched on this for just a second, but the main folks that you guys need to work with or through is your district environmental leadership. So think about your, DAT being the planning and environmental administrator in your district. Think about, your environmental manager, and think about your project development manager. It's those individuals that you would ultimately have the right to send an email and identify who the people are and what role they should have. If you're a consultant, work through your FDOT project manager. Then the FDOT project manager can identify the resources and what role they should have, and they'll make a request through the environmental leadership down in that district. Sometimes I get direct emails from other folks, and that's fine. I just tend to reply to all and then add in the appropriate district environmental leadership and ask them to approve. We won't create accounts until people with that authority within the district have confirmed that those people should have access, because having access means that you have certain rights within the application. It means you can edit things, you can update things, you can add documents, you can draft things. So we want to make sure that the people who have that authority in the district that are responsible ultimately for those projects approve that authority. When you send an email, we don't really need all that much. We just need name, email, and the roles that individuals would be signed. At a high level, we'll just look at a couple of the roles, whether it's a project manager or whether it's data entry. I think for the most part, your consultant community and maybe your local staff would fit under project data entry role. This allows them to draft things. It allows them to upload documents. It allows them to really kind of prepare everything on the document, but it doesn't put them in the approval role. So that project manager, they have all those same rights. And I want you to think about it like the data entry person can do most things, but they can't do everything. The project manager can do everything that the data entry person did, plus they have some more authority within the system. Then it moves up to the district environmental manager, who can do everything that the project manager can do and everything that the data entry people can do as well. You got some questions? Read them off to me. We'll answer them.
Okay. How do we delegate authority in SWIP when someone is out unexpectedly?
So if they're out unexpectedly, there's kind of two things you can do. One, SWIP is obviously an internet-based application. You don't have to be on a DOT computer. You can be anywhere. It works on your phone. It works on tablets. It works on any internet-based computer. So I guess I say that just because someone's out doesn't necessarily mean that they don't have access to SWIP. And we'll show you how to delegate. It's very quick. It's very simple. Should take only a few seconds, and you can do it on any type of platform. So that's one way that you could still get it done if you're going to be out unexpectedly. If you're out unexpectedly and that's it, you don't have access to anything, you're not going to have time, you're thinking about much more important things, you send an email to me, up here to help, you copy the people and the leadership in that particular district, letting me know what you're trying to do and why, and I want to see that everybody who's going to be a part of that delegation are copied on the email, and then we'll work behind the scenes to get that taken care of in their absence, unexpected absence.
And the next question is, could you please clarify how delegating an environmental document approval from an FDOT employee to a consultant, e.g. in case of absence of the assigned employee to the project, how does it ultimately go down to an FDOT employee? Not sure I heard you correctly.
So if you're like the district environmental manager and you have other DOT staff, and I'm going to be out for 2 weeks, and Mike Konikoff is a DOT employee, and he works on my staff, and I know I'm going to be on vacation for 2 weeks, I can delegate my authority to Mike Konikoff. While Mike Konikoff has my authority for 2 weeks, I go in and I say, I'm going to be out starting Monday. I'm going to the Bahamas for 2 weeks, and I'm going to come back 2 weeks later. During those 2 weeks, Mike, as a DOT employee, can approve anything that I would normally approve. So he can send the electronic document submittal, he could approve the type 1, he could approve the type 2, and he would do all that under my authority. So the way it would show up within the system is it would say, Mike Konikoff for Peter McGilvery. Now, during those same 2 weeks, I can still say I'm in the Bahamas, but I got some internet access and I decided to check in, which was a horrible idea. I don't know why I would, but during those 2 weeks, I'm able to check my email a little bit, and I can see that, hey, there's some things that I could go in and approve. Just because I gave Mike my authority for those 2 weeks does not prevent me from doing the work. I can still go in as myself and approve anything that I need to approve as myself, and it'll say Pete McGilvery approved this. If Mike during the same 2 weeks did it, it would say Mike Konikoff for Pete McGilvery. Now, you can't and you shouldn't ever be pushing your approval authority to a non-DOT person. So if you are or if you have, you need to stop that. So I hope I answered the question. If you had something.
Just to clarify, you cannot delegate to a consultant.
That's right. You cannot delegate to a consultant if you're a approval authority. Yeah.
And those are the only ones who can delegate.
Yeah. Is that all the questions, or did we have
one more, I'm sorry. Is SWEPT related in any way to Project Suite, and if not, are there plans to merge the two applications?
So SWEPT is not directly related to Project Suite, but there is a connection between the two. SWEPT has been created to be the official department environmental project record. So where you're dealing with the environmental process, SWEPT is the environmental project record. It's where all the documents are going to be housed. It's where the approvals occur. It's where the administrative record will get developed from. But it does have connections to other applications in an indirect way. And I say an indirect way because when documents and approvals occur within SWEPT, there is a connection that as those approvals and documents are pushed into the environmental business area of the electronic document management system, those documents are organized, they're stored, they have the appropriate naming convention applied to them. Once they get stored in the EDMS, that electronic document management system, there are plenty of other applications within the department that are able to pull those documents into their application. So for instance, Project Suite. Project Suite has a connection to the EDMS, and if you go after the documents have been approved within SWEPT, it may take up to 24 hours to show up in Project Suite, and it has to do with they only update their query once each night. So it all depends on when it was approved in SWEPT, when it got copied to the EDMS, and when Project Suite ran their update. It can take about 24 hours, but 24 hours later, if you go in Project Suite and you add on the environmental module, and then you look at enterprise documents, it will have all of the documents that are coming from SWEPT in there. There's no other plans to integrate any further. This is the environmental project record. Project Suite is able to pull those records from the EDMS, and we're managing the storage and attribution of that. Do you have any more questions, or is that it? Okay, great questions. Good job. Let's see. So that was the two main roles, were the data entry and the project manager. The other roles, that district environmental manager, they have a higher level of authority, so they can do everything the data entry person could do. They can do everything the project manager can do, but they also have the additional responsibility where, just like you always could, all districts could always approve type 1 categorical exclusions. That stays in the district. It's just done electronically now. Depending on the nature and complexity of a reevaluation, and coordination on the reevaluation with your project delivery coordinator. Some reevaluations can go through the consultative process and be completely signed down in the district, or they have to be elevated up to OEM for routing and approval. If it's through discussions with the PDC, the project delivery coordinator, there's low risk. Maybe you just finished the environmental document, and now you're quickly going into design, and there hasn't been much time lapse between the two, and there hasn't really been much change. There's low risk on the project, and through that coordination, or maybe it's just the nature of the project is very low risk, it's determined that it can be completed at the district level as through a consultative process. Then that review and approval occurs by the district environmental manager on that reevaluation, and we'll go through the form and show you guys how that works. The district project development managers, their review reviewing the environmental documents. They're also part of the environmental document submittal process, which we'll go through in a little more detail in a little bit. And when we get to the environmental document submittal, I think the best and easiest way to sort of describe it is just think about that as being the routing sheet. Think about, you know, in the districts, you've got a task work order or you have a contract that needs to go through all the various steps. You know, the person who wants the task work order, the task work order manager's got to sign it, the project manager's got to sign it, the office manager's got to sign it. Maybe you've got some procurement, maybe you've got encumbrances that have to happen, maybe legal's got to do it, maybe all the way up until, you know, whoever ultimately has to sign execution of that contract all the way up to your district secretary or whatever. It's that routing sheet that verifies that all the stops along the route are documented, that everybody had an opportunity, they all had an opportunity to provide feedback or continue to push it forward in that review and approval process. So when we talk about that, just think of that manual routing sheet that we're used to all do. When we get to SWEPT, it really comes down to 5 big components. We talked about project dashboards, so that's where things are coming in through your Primavera schedule based on FM and based on using those 700 series codes from PSM. There's a separate training on that. We'll show you where those are located. That's not going to be our focus today. There's also the quality and performance. That's where the self-assessments occur, the audit support, the reporting on our performance measures. And then there's also team management. That's how folks get assigned up here to be part of the review team, and how we know for every project who are the folks that need to be a part of that review and approval. But today's focus is going to look at these top 2 items. It's going to focus on project input and setup and the project record, the project documentation itself within the system. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mike Konikoff, and he's going to give a SWEPT demonstration. This is going to just be an overview. He's going to talk about general navigation, the left-hand menus, how you get around the site. So Mike, I'm going to hand it to you.
All right. Thank you, Pete.
And if you can make sure you press play, and then away we go.
So today we're going to be using our testing and training servers. So this is a version of the SWEPT website that's just for testing demonstration purposes. While the project data may appear real because it's coming from some work program data, it's not creating any records in production. The site is password protected. You need a username and password to log in. If you forget your password, there is a link where you can type in your username or email address and reset your password. You will get a email notification with instructions how to log in. If you put in the wrong password 3 times, your account will be locked. The forgot your password function will both reset your password and unlock your account, or you can always contact us at the help desk using the contact information shown on the login page and also in the site footer. While I'm going to be demonstrating the site in Internet Explorer today, we have designed it to work in all modern browsers and also to have a responsive design, which means it should work on a variety of screen sizes and devices, anything from tablets to phones, mobile devices, as well as, of course, laptops and PCs. So when you log into SWEPT, you're presented with what we call a landing page. It's organized with the main navigation menu along the left-hand side. There is a menu toggle button that appears toward the top left of the screen that allows you to toggle that main navigation menu on and off. Also, as the screen size changes, you can see you can see the site lays itself out to fit within that available space. And the menu is also available at those smaller screen sizes, again, through the menu toggle button. Depending on your screen size, it may come down from the top versus the left. You can always get back to this home page by either clicking the home link in the upper left or the OEM swept logo toward the upper left as well. Most important thing I want to point out in the navigation menu is there is a help section that includes an overview that talks about all the stuff I'm going to present in this overview demo, so you can read about it. There's a quick guides section. We're adding more of these all the time. These are intended to be handy, printable guides that take you through a specific process in SWEPT, requesting SWEPT access, the environmental document review process, the environmental document submittal, and uploading project documents are the available quick guides right now. You can either click the title of the guide or the PDF link to open a PDF of those guides. We also have training videos available. We're adding more of these as well. These are meant to be targeted, focused, how to complete specific tasks within SWEPT. We also do provide some recordings of training sessions like these in this section. And then the SWEPT contacts page gives all of the contacts for central office, the technical support contacts, as well as for each district, who the project delivery coordinators are, the engineering, review and analysis folks, as well as the administrator support, OGC, and then the high-level district contacts are listed as well. Moving back up to the home page, you can see the modules icons laid out across the top of the screen. Those will take you to the landing pages for each of those modules, where you can get more options and lists of projects to work with. Beneath that is an alerts section. These are going to be action items, things that are requiring approvals or actions to move a project to the next step of the process. Each of those will have a link to allow you to complete those actions. And then also point out in the upper right of the screen, there is an alert icon as well. This will take you to a detailed page listing all of the alerts where you can actually dismiss alerts if you've already completed the action or don't need to see the alert anymore. And there'll be a red circle with a number inside of it when new alerts pop up. Those are alerts you have not seen before on the alert page or clicked the link to do the alert action. Next to that, there's a profile icon. This is where you can change your password, update your contact information. For those of you who have authority that can be delegated, which would be the district environmental managers, project development managers, and project managers, you can complete that action here, and I'll demonstrate that shortly. And then there's also a logout link, which will log you out of the site. The site does have a 15-minute timeout, and that's 15 minutes of no activity. The site does keep track of if you're actively using the site, mousing, scrolling, clicking, but if you are inactive for 15 minutes, it will log out, and I'll just demonstrate what that looks like by hitting the logout link in a new tab. You can see it'll say your session has expired. Do you want to restart your session? When you hit restart session, it's going to allow you to log back in the dialog, and that way you can continue where you left off without losing any work. So if you were typing in a form, you got a phone call, had to leave, you came back and it said your session has expired, just click restart session and you'll be able to pick up where you left off. I'm going to show you Delegate Authority. The Delegate Authority page, again, available from the profile icon, takes you to a form where it's going to have your name listed and then a place to input the name of the person that you're delegating authority to. You can either start typing their name or just hit the space bar to get a pick list of individuals. Again, these are going to be department individuals who you can delegate authority to. I'll go ahead and choose an individual, and then you give a date range. So it can be in the future. If I know I'm going to be out at the end of the month, I will go ahead and input that, and I can put in a comment. And then you can save. You can see once you've saved that delegation, it appears in the active delegations list. As they expire, they'll move to the expired delegations list. The active delegations you can edit. You can change the date range, the comment. Each of those actions will produce an email like this with minus all of the debugging information, but it says you have been delegated as, and then it'll say the role for the individual, and then the date range, and you'll be able to perform the delegated responsibilities, etc. So all the individuals know what's occurred, and if you need to expire the delegation early, you can always set the date range back to a date in the past and save it. Or you can call the help desk. Beneath the profile icon, I'm going to move on from delegation now. There's a search box. This allows you to search by FM number, project name, or person name to get a list of projects. So for example, I'll just search the word Golden, and I get a couple of projects, Golden Glades, Golden Gate Boulevard. I also get some documents. Those are going to be documents that are somehow related to those projects with Golden in the name. And then there's also a listing of any people who might match that search term. You can choose which categories you want to search on, which districts to return results for, and also how many results per page. Each of those results is hyperlinked to either the document itself or the project page or a contact record for that person. I'm going to go back to the home page now and just finish showing you the general navigation. To the left of the search, there are some buttons. They're initially disabled. They become active when, usually when you're on a form. So you'll be able to PDF the form. Some of our forms, like the scope of services, allow you to create a Word version. Some reports have an Excel version, and then also we have a zip icon. That is used to generate the form as well as include all of the supporting documentations and package them in a zip file, and I'll show that to you on the Type 1 CE. And then scrolling down the landing page, the main home page of the site, you've got a listing of my projects. These are going to be projects that you have an association with. So for the district environmental managers and project development managers, it's probably going to be all projects in the district. For project managers, it'll be your projects you're assigned as a project manager on or have created. And then beneath that is my region. These would be all projects in your district. Consultants who have access to more than one district will see all of those regional projects listed. The lists are filterable. So you can, for example, type in an FM number, and the list will filter itself down to match. And so all of those columns are filterable. The list is also paged, so it shows so many projects per page, and you can page through the list. And then each of those projects is linked to a project homepage. So actually, I'm going to choose a different one. I'll choose a Type 2. And again, We've used real project data, but these may not be actual type 2s. All right. Choose a more realistic project. We have lots of testing data on this server. So here is a project that we have classified as a type 2 in our testing server. It may not be one in reality. You can see the project name is across the top of the page. Beneath that, the FM numbers. A project can have one or more FM numbers associated with it. One of them is designated the primary FM number. That one will appear first. Each of those FM numbers has an ISO, that's an Item Segment Overview link, as well as a Project Suite Enterprise Edition link that will take you to the pages for those projects in those systems. So there's some linkage. Beneath that, we have information that is coming from work program. For example, the group identifiers. We receive a work program export called the super file nightly, as well as we've gotten all the historic work program data going back 75 years. So if your project has an FM number, we should be able to find it and load it within SWEPT and pull in that associated data. So that includes the group identifiers, the district, the county, the work mix, and the FAP number. You're able to enter a project description when you set up the project, as well as going forward. You can modify it as needed. You can associate ETDM numbers with your project. That will produce a link that goes to the latest published summary report for that ETDM number. So that's your basic information there. On the right, you've got a project map. If the project does have segments in RCI that match the FM number, it will be mapped, and you can see it's an interactive map. And then in the middle column, we have the contact information for the project. So this is going to be your district project team. You'll have an opportunity to assign these editors when you set the project up or going forward, as well as the project manager. The OEM reviewers are automatically assigned based on which district the project is in. OEM does have the ability to change those assignments based on workload or whatever is needed. And then OGC reviewers are either assigned by OEM as needed, or as Pete mentioned, they're going to be automatically assigned or on EIS, or there's an individual Section 4F. And then there's a project contact list that has all the detailed contact information, including mailing address of all of the project team members. Scrolling down the project page, we have the project schedule data. This is coming from the PSM system. Again, we receive an export file from that system nightly and process it, so this information is automatically updated each night. If the dates are in the future, they'll appear with just a white background and in italicized text. As they actually occur in the schedule, just like in the item segment overview activities report, there'll be an A after the date to indicate it's actual, and it'll no longer be in italics. And then if the date occurred on time or early, it'll have a green background. If it's behind by less than 2 weeks, it'll have a yellow background. And if it's behind by more than 2 weeks, it'll have a red background. And that's going to be based on the early finish date and the actual finish date. And then beneath that, we have the project documents. The project documents is organized in folders, and I'll just collapse those with this middle button so you can see the folder organization. We've come up with an organization that's consistent across all of the document types, Type 2, EA, EIS. You'll see more options available under each folder depending on the document type, but it'll be a consistent organization. Each of those folders has what we call products. Those are types of files that can appear in that folder. And then some folders, in addition, have subfolders or subtopics and then products that fit into that subtopic area. Each of the folders has an upload button. So when you click the upload button, you are presented with a dialog. The first thing you'll see on the dialog is you need to select a product. That is, tell us what is this file that you are uploading. And the list of products is going to be limited to the items that appear under that topic folder. You will have an opportunity, though, to link it to other topic folders, and I'll show you that in a moment. So let's say you are uploading a detailed damage inspection report, for example. You'll select that product. You will navigate by clicking the Choose File button to where the file is located. Okay, and it'll pick up from the file name a description of the file. You can change that description to be something meaningful to you. It'll also pick up from the file the date, the last modified date of the file as the publication date. You can also change that as needed. And then a short series of questions that we've pre-selected the most common answers to save time, which is this file an attorney work product? Most of the time the answer to that is going to be no. Is this document part of the administrative record? Again, most of the time it will be yes. Is it exempt from public record? Most of the time, no. Does this file contain information that supports other topics? Initially, that's set to no. I'm going to move back up and show you what happens if I select yes for attorney work product. In that case, because it's an attorney work product, it's not going to be part of the administrative record, and it is exempt from public record, and those selections will be grayed out. But for anything that's not an attorney work product, you can change the answer to those questions or leave it at the most common default. And then finally, does this file contain information that supports other topics? This is where you can link that file to other sections. And so rather than uploading the same file multiple times, you can upload the file once and then say, for example, that this particular file also supports, and I'm probably not going to choose something entirely appropriate, but just to demonstrate the functionality, I've said that this file also supports other supporting documentation for utilities. And I'll click Save. The file will upload, and then you can see it has the standard naming convention applied. It's got the FM number, the document type, the district, the original file name, as well as the date of publication. I can edit any of those fields as needed, and also any of the other questions that I've answered, I can change the answers to. And then you can see that same file now appears under environmental utilities and railroads, and there's the same file. So we've uploaded one file, but it's appearing in multiple places in the project documents. You can delete the file. When you delete a file, it's going to ask, do you want to remove this from just this one topic, or do you want to completely delete the document from SWEPT? So you have the opportunity to remove that linkage to the other topics or products that you associated with, or you can completely remove it, which will remove it from all topics. I'm going to cancel out of there and just show you. Finally, there's a Send to EDMS button. You have the opportunity to send files to EDMS as needed, and that will allow them to show up in those other systems, as Pete mentioned, like PSEE. When the final environmental document is approved in SWEPT, any files that have not already been sent to EDMS and are not an attorney work product will be automatically sent to EDMS. And then the last thing I want to show you is when you upload a file, if you say it's correspondence, it will appear in the folder list as well as in the correspondence list at the bottom of the screen, and then any attorney work products will appear both in the project document list with a symbol indicating they're confidential, as well as in the attorney work products list at the bottom of the screen. Those attorney work products are only accessible to individuals who have access to your within your district. So other districts cannot view those files. And I think that is it for the general navigation.
Okay, a couple other things just before we switch back. Maybe scoot back up to the top and just show scope of service for me. So scope of service is one of those items you guys got to make sure on your projects that you upload to the file. And part of that has to do with the QA/QC process and being able to verify that your scope of service included a QC component in there. So whatever the executed scope of services for all your various projects, make sure you go in there and upload that. If it has a separate quality control plan, add that as well. But that's going to be a consistent ask for all projects within the system, so make sure you're doing that. The other thing I did want to hit on the attorney work products piece is that, so when you're uploading a document, you saw on the upload that the most common choices are there. They're already selected. So for the most part, it should be as simple as selecting, checking off which products this document that you're about to upload is connected to, and then just like you would an email, just browsing to it and locating it. For the attorney work product piece, much like Mike said, that's a very specific thing. You should be coordinating with your attorney. Maybe the attorney gave you an email, they gave you some direction that's relevant to the project, but it shouldn't be it should be part of the project file, but it certainly shouldn't be part of the administrative record, and only individuals with specific sets of rights should be able to see it. And so by uploading that email or that correspondence or that review as an attorney work product, it identifies it clearly in the project upload file itself, but it also pulls together an individual category below. And later on, another component to this is that should there be any litigation or request that we would have to develop an administrative record, this structure that you're putting these things in becomes the initial spot that you begin to look at to develop your admin record. You're looking at the things that you're putting in your project file, you're identifying things that you think should be in the administrative record, you're working with your local resources. Ultimately, you'd make a recommendation on what you would think the administrative record would contain. Then the attorneys up here would also be looking at those same project files, those same records, looking at your recommendations. They have an administrative record interface that allows them to see what your recommendations are, and then ultimately they can supplement it or move stuff around, or perhaps you kept every email. Say it's one email that everyone keeps hitting reply to all on, and you keep uploading the same email as each reply kind of comes in. Well, I know in conversations with legal, they tend to get rid of the first 19 of them, and they just keep the 20th one because it contains all the other emails. So there's interfaces in here that allow them to individually look at the records and say, yeah, that one should be in the administrative record. No, that one should not be in the administrative record. So I just wanted to highlight that there's another system that sits on top of this that you work with the attorneys to make recommendations on what you think should be contained in the admin record, and then they have the ability to modify that until they get to something that they think is acceptable. Then within that same function, you can export everything as a zip file that has a folder structure where everything's organized, and it has a spreadsheet that sits on top of all that with color-coded tabs that link directly to all the various documents and serves as an index to the admin record. It's not really part of the training today, but I did want to highlight that as another item. So as I'm switching, I'm going to take over control. I'll jump back on here. Ruth, do we have any questions?
No more questions.
Okay. Show my screen. That's good. You know what? I'm going to show you guys something else while I'm here. one of the things I did want to show you, since we have a lot of folks on, is the Office of Environmental Management website. So in addition to where resources have been uploaded on SWEPT when you're actually in the application, I just wanted to show you that we're taking all of these same recordings and our CBTs that we're developing, and all these various things have been updated and are located on our training site. So what I did was I went to Office of Environmental Management, I went to training, and then on here we've updated the site to break down into various tracks. And on these various tracks you have links to specific sets of materials. So for instance, on this one for the statewide environmental project tracker, we've uploaded lots of videos. As a matter of fact, Mike and I have independently recorded the training that we're giving you guys today, and that information was recorded just last week and has already been posted on here. So there are lots of little webinars and detailed trainings that are also located on here. So you don't even have to have a SWEPT account to be able to see how the site works and see the various training associated with that. Okay, so let me come back in. And we'll begin talking about the SWEPT support of the environmental document review process, which is the next part. And there's a quick guide that was recently sent out, and that's what this screen looks like. And let's see, I've got it on here itself. And these quick guides are available on SWEPT, and they're available everywhere else. And the way that this quick guide is organized is it's intended to kind of connect all the various systems together in one. And you don't have to see that on the screen. I know it's very difficult. It's very small. So we're going to zoom into the initial part of it. And we'll keep referring to this quick guide to provide some context to you so you know how all the different bits and pieces all connect. And then after the training, when you have that quick guide, it should be able to be a good refresher about, I have this class of action, what do I need to do? So the way that it's organized is on the left-hand side, it breaks down by classes of action. In this case, we're just looking at the very top. We're looking at type 1s, and we're looking at type 2s. Then it ties across to all the various functions or systems that are kind of tied in the process. The first box is always the ERC, the Electronic Review and Comments column. You'll notice that there's some X's in here. In this case, an X means no action occurs at this point in the process. So if we look over to the row and it's type 1, and we look at ERC in the column and it has the X, we know, yes, it's a type 1. Type 1s are approved at the district, so there's there's nothing to load into ERC, so that we know that doesn't actually occur. Those systems don't connect. The next one is that environmental document submittal, right? And the way I described it to you earlier, which is the way I'd like for you guys to kind of remember, is think about it as your electronic routing sheet, that it documents the documents as they move throughout the process so that everybody who has a role or authority in the review and or approval of that document, it's basically the routing sheet that documents all of those reviews and approvals throughout the entire system. So that's the second column. So then we look at functionally, what happens with district approval, and then functionally what happens with an OEM approval. So on this same very simplified example of the type 1, it's type 1s are categorically excluded. They're completed and approved down in the district. So as you would expect, you don't need to put anything into ERC. You do not need to you do not need to complete a routing sheet that would funnel up through the district. You do complete district approval, and it does not move up through the process for OEM approval. When we get to it on type 2, right, a higher level of documentation, there's a little bit more involved, right? There's an initial review, and then there's when everything's ready and we're routing for signatures. And this will be a pretty consistent thing throughout, whether it's an EA, whether it's an EIS, or whether it's a reevaluation. There's this initial review where we're looking at the draft stuff, and then we've addressed all the comments and everybody feels confident that this document can then begin to route through the signature process. So on the initial ones, you know, when we think about the type 2, you're going to fill out the form. You're going to see it's going to be an online form, but you don't need to approve it. You're going to PDF it. You're going to put it into ERC, right? You're going to save it as a PDF. You're going to upload it into ERC, and you're going to you know, put in all the supporting documentation for that. You're then going to begin to fill out the routing sheet and say, hey, our stuff is loaded in ERC. So on the electronic routing sheet, that document submittal, you're going to say my submittal type is equal to initial, because this is the first round, first time folks are seeing it. The document type is a type 2, because it's a new type 2. If this was a reevaluation, the document type would be a reevaluation. So you want to make sure that if you're doing a reevaluation of a type 2, that it's still a reevaluation. You'd only select the document type equal to a document name if it's the first and only of its kind, not a reevaluation. Then submit it for routing. It then begins to go through the environmental manager and the project development manager. On the routing sheet, they're saying the documents are complete, they're uploaded, all the parts are there, QA/QC has been performed. You know, folks can begin to go review it. That sends the routing sheet up to your project delivery coordinator. The project delivery coordinator is then confirming for the staff here. They're looking in ERC. They're making sure that the documents they expect to be there are there. It looks like it's complete. The initial is ready for folks to start looking at, and then they confirm back to the district and begin their normal review in ERC. So up here, the folks are starting to meet. They're having their meeting, their kickoff meeting. They're having their 21-day meeting. They're pulling together their comments. They're submitting them back in through ERC. And then you guys work collectively as a team until it gets to a point where everybody understands the comments, the documents have been updated, everybody feels as though it's been addressed adequately. And then once everybody's to the point where we feel like the document's in good shape, the supporting materials are in good shape, everybody feels that we're ready to go, then you take that same document and you begin to route through the signature process. Because we're routing through signatures, there's no reason for us to go back into ERC. We already did that on the initial one. So now we're attaching the supporting documentation, and we're updating the type 2 form. We're finalizing it in the electronic environment, filling out everything, making sure the attachments are pointing to the right stuff. The type 2 is then approved. It's currently by the project manager and the environmental manager. And then we begin to do the EDS, that routing sheet, right? So I've updated my type 2 form. It looks the way it should. We've got it mapped to the right attachments. The project manager and the environmental manager have approved it. So now it's time to begin the routing process up to OEM to begin the signature process. So we're filling out our environmental document submittal form. This time the submittal type, unlike before where it was initial, now it's request for approval. And again, the document type is a type 2 because this is an original type 2. And then we submit it for routing. It then shifts up to those two folks, those two individuals responsible in the district, the environmental manager and the project development manager, whose job is to look at what's been submitted. They say, yes, everything looks good. It should continue in on the process. They're verifying and certifying that QA/QC has occurred on the documentation that is being provided. That shoots off an email up to the OEM project delivery coordinator, who then again looks at the material, looks at the type 2, looks at the supporting stuff, make sure everything is all linked and connected and complete. If the document had a need to go through legal review or it had a 4F, then the next point in the process would be moving it on to legal. If that's not happening on this document, then the PDC confirms the document is ready for approval and they're pushing it on to the environmental program administrator and environmental process administrator, that's Javier and Margie, who are then reviewing the documentation and making their recommendations to the director of OEM. And ultimately, that's the process for how all of these things work. You know, I've talked through how we do it on a Type 2. It's the same for an EA. It's the same for an EIS. There's slight modifications for reevaluation just because some of them can stay at the district level while others move up. The district level 1 is very similar to how Type 1s are handled. The ones that move up are very similar to what's described here for the Type 2s. So with that, it looked like a couple questions came in. So we'll just pause on there for a second and maybe read off the questions to me.
Yeah, so a couple of them are back from the uploading documents. In uploading an email, how do you save that file? As an Outlook message?
No, save it as a PDF. Print a PDF.
And the next question, is there any guidance as to when you need to send a file to EDMS, or just wait until you have the final signed document?
That's completely up to you and the district, and specific to what you are intending to do with that particular file. So for instance, if you think about SWEP being the environmental project file, and just stop using other systems and other locations, and when you have new projects, this is just where you start. You know, if you're looking at a Type 2, or you're looking at an EA, or even an EIS, it can take a long time from start to finish to have, you know, from when you initiated that environmental study until when it's ultimately approved. So if the need is to have some of those documents, those interim products, accessible in other environments, like you want to have it accessible within Project Suite, then you upload it into SWEP, and then you just say send to EDMS. And then that same file will be accessible in those other systems. If you can absolutely wait until the end. You know, if there's no reason that you have to push it. It really comes down to whether or not you would like to have those files accessible in other systems. When the document gets approved, it'll look and say, here are all the files in the project file. Have they already been sent? And if they have, it just skips it. Or if it's been sent, has it been updated? And if it's been updated, then it'll replace the existing one that's in there. And if it hasn't been sent at all on approval, it goes in there as well.
Okay, next question, will SWEP include non-major state actions? Yes,
we're actually very close. So obviously SWEP was designed ultimately for NEPA assignment and the requirements laid out in that negotiated MOU. And so what we had to prioritize to initially review within and get out the door in SWEP were what was required to meet the requirements of the MOU. And so that was really focusing on the federal documents and all the processes that we needed in place to support that. That being said, we absolutely recognize the need for, and we've heard from many of the districts, you know, that have been doing the electronic reviews of Type 1s. Why do I still got to do paper ones of the non-major state actions? What about the SEER forms? And we haven't gotten to SEERs yet, but we have gotten to non-major state actions. The form is very close to completion. We're finishing up the state environmental certification piece, and over the next few weeks, we should be releasing non-major state actions and the state environmental certification. And again, we'll do a specific training just focused on that, so everybody kind of sees how that works as well. Still focusing on the document review process and approvals just a little bit. Some of the things that, you know, that happen, and I want to make sure folks understand, is the whole point of having the routing sheet, right, is to make sure all the right eyeballs verify that everything's correct and that it moves through the process. That also means that those eyeballs are there because they're the technical managers or the approvers, and they're making recommendations ultimately to the director of the Office of Environmental Management for the department's signature. So there can be, and probably will be, at least till we all work everything out, you know, comments that occur through all steps throughout the process. So I just want folks to be mindful of that.
There's one comment that kind of might be related to that with the Type 1 CE that Samantha noted. We have had situations, for example, a Section 4 FDOT that needs to be sent to OEM through ERC for Type 1 CE.
Yeah, and that's fine. And in that instance, you would just send that DOA outside the system and ERC in communication with your project delivery coordinator, get everybody to look at it and review it, and then the resulting document should be attached as supporting information on the approved Type 1.
And then the last question is, what's the time frame for OEM's review approval for both the initial review and request for approval?
So each are up to 30 days. Up to 30 days total. So from the day that the project delivery coordinator says, yes, we've looked at the material provided by the district and it looks complete and accurate, just like they said it did. All right, everybody, you can begin your review. It's 30 days till basically director signature if you're at request for approval, or on initial submit the comments. Okay, no problem. Hearing no other questions, I'm going to turn it over to Mike. We're going to do an abbreviated Type 1 because, like I said, the form itself, you guys have all been a part of. You've seen the updates. It's changing, and it's changing by quite a bit just based on what the original form looked like. So there'll be another specific webinar that we'll do statewide and record. That's one of the big techniques we try to use is we recognize everybody's busy, everybody has lots of meetings, everybody has lots going on. So we try to get out the material and we try to record it and then we make it accessible. So with that, Mike, I'm going to turn it over to you, and if you can press play and then walk through the Type 1s for these guys, I'd appreciate it.
All right, so the Type 1 form is available in the main navigation menu under Project Input Setup. Just click Type 1 Categorical Exclusion Checklist, and you'll see the electronic version of the Type 1 form. This, again, is the current version, which will be replaced soon. But on all of these, typically the first thing you do is enter your FM number. You need to enter at least the item and segment number and then click load, although you can put in the full number if you have it. When you put in at least the item and the segment, it'll go out and check the work program database that we have for matching FMs, and then you can select the appropriate one from the list and then click create new. If a Type 1 checklist had been created previously for that FM, you'll be given the option to either edit the existing checklist or create new, and that you can use either for example district-wide projects like we've seen on some hurricane recovery FM numbers, multiple Type 1s with different work mixes all tied to the same FM. Also, as you know, there's no reevaluation form for a Type 1. In that case, you would simply do the Type 1 form again as the project moves through the phases, and in that case, you may need to select the same FM number again, and then create a new checklist. I can answer that. You do not use the basic setup for Type 1. You just fill out the Type 1 checklist. The basic setup is going to be for your higher level documents. You can put in one or more related FM numbers as needed. Just type in at least the first 6 digits, and then you will get a pick list. In this case, I use the same item number. That is not required. You can put in any other FM number that is related, and it will appear on the checklist alongside the primary FM number.
So I think that's an important point because we do have lots of statewide instances where they're completing a single type 1 checklist, but for multiple FMs, this is a way to accomplish that. You also can put in as many related ones. I think I saw one that had 6. So you can complete the type 1. You can put in 1 FM and then add the related FMs. They'll all show up on the completed type 1 form. They'll also show up on the resulting environmental certification as well.
Yes, and the search index will pick up those related FM, and if you search on the related, you'll get the results for the main FM number for that project. And then just so you know, the search index currently refreshes every 10 minutes. So if you just entered the FM for the first time, about on average 5 minutes later, it'll show up in the search results. So as you can see, I added a related FM. I can X that out if I need to, add others. The work program description, work mix, county are coming from work programs, so they're going to be read-only. If you need those changed, we ask that you change them, correct them in work program, and they'll be reflected here the next day. That goes for FAP number as well. The project description, you can enter a brief project description. It does allow for some formatting, bold, italics, underline, bullets, and numbers. Then you choose the CE activity type for the primary activity associated with the project. And so I'm just going to choose C27 here, but you'd pick from the C list or the D list the primary activity type, and then you get into the questions. Currently 12 questions, yes, no, about impacts. I'm going to go ahead and quickly answer no for all of these. Each question will require either a comment, which you can put in the box beneath the question, or a supporting document. You can have the same supporting document supporting all questions, and just to demonstrate this quickly, that's what I'll do. And so I'll click Upload Document, choose a file. This works similar to the upload dialog we saw earlier with a bit fewer options. Here it's supporting documentation, correspondence, picture, or other. If you select supporting documentation, you're asked which questions it supports. I'll say all. And then you can see all of these questions now have a green check mark in the supporting documentation column. You can upload as many different documents as needed to support individual questions, all questions. If you do choose other, you're asked for an additional field to describe what that other document is. If you select correspondence, you're asked who the correspondence is from and to. Finally, you've got the additional supporting activities box, and then the options. So because I'm logged in as a district environmental administrator, I've got Save Draft, which a project data entry or project manager would also have. I've also got Approve, so I can do all this in one step. And then Reassign allows me to assign the checklist to someone else to finish preparing. This would be used typically by a data entry person to hand off the checklist to someone else to complete. I'll go ahead and approve. And you can see now I'm looking at a confirmation page. It tells me that the checklist has been approved. It gives me a prompt to do the environmental certification, which I can click the link to complete. You can see we're in a read-only version of the checklist. The supporting documentation is there. It's been prepared and approved by environmental manager or designee, and then I can reopen for editing if needed and go through the process again, or I can just go ahead and complete the environmental certification, which I'll do now. So the environmental certification, you can either follow the link on the Type 1 checklist, or you can go to project I'm sorry, I think you do have to go through the checklist, or you can go through the project page. There'll be a prompt there as well. So on the status environmental certification form, it is used for more than one document type, but it will pick up, in this case, that it's for a type 1. And then you just simply click approve, and that saves the environmental certification. And then if we were to go to the project page, we will see the approved environmental certification. This will take you to a PDF of that file. The approved checklist has 2 links. One of them takes you to the form, which will allow you to reopen for editing if needed. The other is a PDF of the approved document that will always be in the project file. So in case you need to reopen, reapprove, you'll have that history, and then the supporting documentation. There's also an approval history that appears at the bottom of the project page showing the history on that project.
Now, Mike, you weren't crazy when you were looking for the left-hand menu and the environmental cert. There will be a left-hand menu link in that same location. One of our other developers is working on that, so that in addition to finding it on the project page or searching by the FM, there'll also be a left-hand menu that can get you to the environmental certification. One of the other things I know that came up from District 6 regarding environmental certifications is that they may not be done immediately following the development of the type 1. So perhaps showing how you can clear an alert and stuff so it stops popping up.
Okay, sure.
For them would be helpful, because there's no reason that you have to do the environmental certification right after you do the type 1. They're separate, distinct things. You can do it whenever it makes sense for you to do it.
So in order to do that, I'm just going to show you. So when you have to do an environmental certification, they'll typically be listed here. You'll also get an email, and so for example, here it says the document's been approved, and it takes me to the project page where I can complete the certification. But I'm going to go ahead and I'll attempt to demonstrate. If I approve a checklist, here is one that was prepared by an analyst, and I'm going to approve it. I can put in comments if I want. It's now been approved, and what will happen is within about 30 seconds or so, an alert will pop up here in the alert notification. Also, if we go to the home page, we should immediately see an alert for that project that says we need to complete the environmental certification. Now, as Pete said, you might want to clear this off your list. What you can do is click on the notification or alert icon in the upper right. That's going to take you to a detailed page about the alerts. And here's this complete the environmental certification alert. I just hit dismiss. All it does is moves it from your alerts list, that's your to-do list, to your dismissed alerts. It doesn't actually go away. You can always restore it. You can complete the action, but if you just want to shelve it for later, what that will do is it will remove it from your home page. It also removes it from your new alerts. But if you need to get back to it again, you can go to that alerts page and complete it.
Do we have any other?
Yes, can we create more than one environmental certification for one FM, for example, for push-button projects?
So I would think that's yes, because you can do the same type 1 over and over again, which means you're doing a different environmental certification over and over again.
I believe that is correct.
We can check, but we believe that's correct. And the last question was, the PDF generated in Swift appears to only reference attachments. Is there a specific way to generate documents for public display? Oh, so the link from the PDF, you would just have to click on that and print it out.
The other,
or you can export.
Yeah, I was just going to say, the other option is this zip button will create a zip file that includes both the checklist itself as well as the supporting documentation. And then, as you mentioned, within the PDF, there are links, and following those links, you could also access the supporting docs.
And that's it with the questions for right now.
Okay, awesome. Let's see. I think I've already covered the next part for the Type 2, the EDS. Go back to my PowerPoint and take it back. Okay, so talking about the Type 2s, we talked about the initial process and then the routing for signatures. Recognizing as it's, completing the ERC that you guys are all working together with the office up here, resolving comments. Ultimately, when all the comments are getting addressed and you're ready to begin to route for signatures, you're completing the Type 2 form. You're approving it locally, you're beginning to route it up through district and up to OEM. Again, you're doing request for approval, it's Type 2, and you begin the route. Everybody certifies at the district level that it's complete, and then it moves on to the PDC, who reviews all the materials. The things that are important, I just want folks to understand is, there's a lot of controls in place. Hopefully you guys aren't sending stuff up that you don't think are ready, so if you're seeing things at, the environmental manager and project development manager stage, that you guys are pushing it back down to your project managers if you notice that things are incomplete or need a little bit more work. The same thing happens to us as things flow up to Margie and Javier. Depending on the nature of their review, it might be simple things that might come out in the discussion or review of the documentation, but it could also be a little more substantial. So they'll work with you guys and through the project delivery coordinators to make sure everybody's on the same page with the documentation and what's stated in all the various files that are being reviewed and approved. We talked about for legal review and legal sufficiency that this process has changed slightly, but I do want you guys to be mindful of it, and that's depending on the nature of the project. So if it's a EIS or it's a document that involves an individual 4F, then a legal sufficiency determination is going to be required by OGC. So the process gets slightly modified. So traditionally, if it doesn't include that, if it's not an EIS or it doesn't have a 4F, it'll go from, once it reaches OEM, the project delivery coordinators, it would normally go right from them to the Javieres and Margies. But if there is an individual 4F determination that needs to be made, then it's Office of General Counsel performing their legal sufficiency review, and it'll flow in that same way. So PDCs, OGC, they're going to try to do them and overlap their time, but that's just the nature of the review, and then ultimately on to the director. If based on the nature and specifics of the project, Office of General Counsel gets involved and is going to be part of the review team, then they will be involved very early on. They're in your project coordination meetings, and they would be the next stop after the PDC. PDC would verify everything's there. It would go to OGC and then on to the administrators. When you're using the form, just sort of those details, this is just trying to get you to understand that this is that routing sheet. You're creating your Type 2. When we talk about that one specifically, think about the electronic forms, whether it's a Type 1, whether it's Type 2, whether it's reevaluation. We'll have other ones coming. It's an online form that's tied to a database. So you can go in there and draft that particular form, And once that form has been drafted, you PDF it, and then you would put that one into ERC. When you come back, based on the feedback you got, all the information that you previously had in the form is still there. Now you're just editing it and updating it based on what came back from the review. So initially create it, and then save it as a draft, and then that that draft should be, clicked as a PDF. Mike will show you up at the top. We've got, export to PDF, and then upload it into ERC. When it's in the final OEM approval, we're submitting the Type 2 form for district approval in SWEPT before you do the routing sheet. If you're at the request for approval stage, you want to make sure that the Type 2 is completed and it's signed off locally, that the project manager and the environmental manager have approved it electronically, and that the document itself has everything that it needs to, because once you do the routing sheet and you move it up to OEM, it kind of locks down everything. All that stuff is now being reviewed for the approval process. The ways that you can get to creating that environmental document submittal, you'll see a couple of them, but on the left-hand menu, there's access to that particular form, and then when you're on the projects page, you'll see buttons that are actions that allow you to go and create those. Within the routing sheet itself, there's certain things that are part of that routing. Imported, we pull in the basic project information based on what you're looking at. On the document type, it's important. Remember, I've said a couple times that if you're doing a reevaluation of a previously approved environmental document, then the document type is reevaluation. It's not a type 2. It could be a reevaluation of an EA, it could be a reevaluation of an EIS, whatever it happens to be. But if the action that you're doing is a reevaluation, you want to make sure that that's the document type you select. And then for submittal type, is this going to be the initial, or is this the request for approval? And then you've got your project phase defaults to PD&E. Unless it's a reevaluation, then you can choose. You can identify whether it's a lab project, yes or no, and the type of contract that's important in there. On the initial submittal, you're actually going to type out what's being submitted, what are you uploading into ERC, and status of any other documents that need to be known. Are there any cooperating agencies? If you had an ETDM number, then we're able to actually pull that in and know whether you had any cooperating agencies, and if so, have you shared that information with them? You're also certifying that your district quality control is complete, and you have a spot for your environmental lead if it's someone other than those that are working on there. If you're using the form for request for approval, then you're saying request for approval. You have to tell us whether the supporting public involvement documentations demonstrate your compliance with your PIP. That's an important factor for us because it's one of the quality assurance and quality control performance measures that came out of the negotiated MOU. And it's one of the ways that we report back to FHWA on our performance with that MOU. You also, for contents of submittals, in this case, if you think about your project file can contain lots of things. You're not approving lots of things. You're approving, the document and perhaps, the supporting information that feed into that particular document. So you would choose those documents. It has an interface where you click on Choose Documents, and you navigate to what's being approved. I think for most things, if it's a Type 2, it already pulls in the form. If the attachments are attached to the Type 2, it already pulls that stuff in, but you have an opportunity to supplement it. If you want that, that helps everybody in the review process because now they have links to specifically what's being approved. So your project file might have 50 or 60 things in there, but you're only approving like 5. It's much quicker to be able to just quickly link to the 5 things and have to look through the 50. So that's why it's linked like that. And if anything requires some additional conversation on the status of the documents, you have the ability to communicate that information there. What should you have ultimately in your project file? It's anything that you would have in your project file. So if you think about, you've been doing this process for forever, whatever you would normally have in your project file, in your filing cabinet, in your local system, you know, that's what should be uploaded in SWEPT and in your project file, because SWEPT is the online environmental project file. Going forward, that's it. You should be using that as your electronic filing cabinet for management of your document, for the development of the document, all your coordination, all your technical studies, all your emails, anything that you would normally save into your project file locally, as you've been doing forever. Just make sure you've got it loaded into SWEPT. And this is just that route. We've talked about it multiple times on how things go. It flows up, so you can have consultants or support serve as a project team member, and they can draft the material and then send it for review. If it then goes to the district project manager who reviews the material, they can send it back if the data entry project team person needed some more stuff. And then once they're ready, they're sending it on to the district environmental manager and project development manager, who are certifying the document is complete, or they can send it back. So here's I submit these documents are complete and ready for review and approval, or I need more information. After both managers certify the document in any order, and that's important, it's not linear, it goes out to both people simultaneously, and it doesn't move on until both respond. It doesn't care about the order, it just looks for these two roles have to respond, did they? And once they do, once the second one does, it moves on through the process. It looked like there were some questions.
A couple questions. First question was, in the situations when we would need to send something to OEM for a type 1 CE, again, example would be a section 4 FDOT, do we need to submit an environmental submittal form?
No, you do not.
And then the second question is there a designated person who verifies compliance with the PIP?
So, no, the district is certifying locally that their project file that they're saying should be moved up for approval, that there are items in the project file that demonstrate their compliance. So, you know, if it said they were going to have meetings, they were going to do outreach, and they were going to do all these various things in the plan for how they were going to reach all the communities out there, that there's activities documented that support that they did the things that they said they were going to do in the plan. And so the project manager and the district environmental manager and the project team, they should all be aware of those activities. Those activities should be documented, should be in the project file. And that certification is saying that it is, that there are things in the project file that demonstrate that we did the things in the PIP that we said we were going to do.
And that's the last question.
That was the last one. Okay. So with that, Mike, I'll hand it back to you for the type 2s.
All right.
And then just make sure you press play, and we should be good to go.
Okay, so very similar to the type 1s, the type 2 is a menu item under project input setup. You can also complete this from the project page. If you remember, on the project pages, there are some of the buttons say create or edit, and I'll show you an example. Okay, so in addition to being able to upload files, you can also create some of the forms that are within SWEPT directly from the project page. So either click the Create button next to the Type 2 CE checklist. Once you create it, it'll change to say Edit. Like, for example, down here, the Environmental Document Submittal has an Edit button. Those will allow you to complete those forms. The other option, which I'm demonstrating now, is going through the left-hand menu, and there you'll enter the FM number, and you would use this. Maybe you haven't set up the project in SWEPT already, so there is no project page. So this will be an example of that. So if the project has not been set up in SWEPT already, you'll get a prompt that says more information is needed. It'll step you through the basic setup, and then once you finish that, it'll take you back to this form, just like you had clicked edit from the project page. And so with this particular FM, there's a lot of matching numbers. You're going to want to pick the original PD&E FM. I'm just going to pick one for demonstration purposes. And use selected FM number. Okay, it's going to go out and pull in some data from work program. Again, you're able to enter as many related FM numbers as needed, similar to what we saw earlier on the type 1 form. You just type in at least the item number. You'll get a pick list. You can do that as many times as needed. You can delete those off if needed. Same thing for ETDM projects. You can search either by ETDM number or by project name. And so that will allow you to associate ETDM projects. You can,
and with the ETDM projects, there's a few things. So the SWEPT application, right, is built on top of the same infrastructure that the environmental screening tool and the ETDM process is. So by connecting this environmental document, this FM, back to an ETDM project, it can pull forward information from that project that's known in ETDM that needs to be known in SWEPT. For instance, who's the lead agency? Who is, are there any cooperating or participating agencies? Things like that, where by connecting this project that you're creating in SWEPT and connecting it to a previously screened ETDM number, it makes the join between those two and allows us to pull together some of the information. So what I'm saying is, as you're filling out this basic project setup, if you can connect the two, then there's less questions you have to answer or verify.
yes, and if the ETDM number, if that project had a class of action, they'll pick that up. We just had a question about, can you add an ETDM number later in the process? You can. You can always come back to the basic setup. You can enter the FM number again. It'll take you back to this page. You can enter the ETDM number. One thing to keep in mind with that is it will then go out and pull in data from that ETDM number, which may overwrite data that you've already entered, and that would be, for example, the project description. We are going to be addressing that. One of our outstanding tasks is to not be so aggressive about pulling in the project description and just provide you a button where you have the option to pull it in from ETDM, and that's because the project may have gone through an ETDM screening years ago. The project description may need to be updated anyway, and so that's going to be more of an opt-in type of import. But it will pick up the participating, cooperating agencies as well as federal funding and all that stuff. Yeah. The federal funding actually is picked up from the work program. If the item has a federal appropriation category associated with it, it will answer this question, yes. We can connect that to ETDM as well. Otherwise, the question will be unanswered. This is actually brand new functionality that we're working on, which is to have a project website that you can pull in, and we do have that in ETDM as well, and can pull that in. Yeah, so on that, you'll start to see that kind of pop up on there. One of the comments we've gotten from FHWA is where do some of the documents reside, or the schedule reside in a public accessible location. Depending on the nature of the project, many of these larger projects, type 2s, EAs, EISs, have their own project website. So this is an opportunity for us to put in that project website information here, so that we know that this information does have a public-facing
piece, and here's where it is.
Also, going back to the ETDM number, I just want to mention on the project page, if the ETDM number had been associated, it would appear here under near FAP number. I think we're also going to be adding a button here for you to add or update those, as well as the project description, because it would be quicker and allow you to do those particular updates much faster. So I'm going to continue. The next step on the setup is the project team. If you are the PM, if you have the PM role, which I am currently logged in as a PM, it will pick up my information. If not, again, you can type in the box or hit the space bar to autocomplete. The other thing you can do is choose who do you want to allow to make changes to the project file. These are going to be data entry folks who you can assign, or other project managers, and allow to upload files to your project.
So your consultants, your project support team, your environmental specialists, anybody that should have the right to be able to draft information on your project or be able to upload documents to your project. These are individuals that are project specifically assigned, that are given the rights to be able to draft some of those materials.
Okay, and then finally, you get to the lead agency. Typically that's going to be OEM. You can indicate whether there are participating or cooperating agencies. Let's assume we're going to have one of these. So you just start typing the name of the agency. You can select. Again, if you had an ETDM number and that was recorded in the ETDM system, it would be picked up automatically. And then finally, you get to a check for completeness page. This is just going to list anything we haven't completed. You can finish without completing this information, or you can click the link to go back and complete that information. In this case, it's project limits and website, but I'm just going to skip those for now. And then click finish, and it takes you right back to the Type 2 form. So the Type 2 form, Section 1, has all that basic information we just entered about the project. And then you can attach a project map. This works very similar to all the other upload dialogues we've seen. In this case, it knows it's a project map, so it's not asking us what type of file it is. We can just upload the file. You can modify or delete that file later if needed. You can put in the proposed improvements, the purpose and need, gets into project planning consistency section next. Here, it's going to be driven by the number of segments being advanced, and I'll just pause to answer this question. Are project limits text only or milepost or GIS based? In our system, they're text, and that text can be whatever you need it to be. Typically, it's going to be a from facility and a to facility, but there's nothing to stop you from putting in milepost.
Yeah, we would normally pull that from work program, but the way that that field actually works in work program, it wasn't functioning the way you would think project limits should function. It was actually concatenating a few things.
Yeah, talking to Roger in the work program office, it may look like you're entering project limits in the work program database, but it's actually all part of the project name / description, and so there's not separate fields for us to actually pull that from, so we ask that you input that. Going back to the form, project planning consistency. This is going to be driven by the number of segments being advanced. So if there's just one, there's just going to be one planning consistency table. If there's more than one, let's say I put the number 3, you'll have 3 sections, one for segment 1, one for segment 2, one for segment 3. Assuming we're just going to have one for the purpose of demo, I'll change that to a 1, and then I'll answer the question. So currently adopted CFP, LRTP, any comments, and then whether it's in, for each phase, PE, right-of-way, construction, whether it's in the currently approved TIP, STIP, the TIP dollars, the TIP, STIP fiscal year, and based on feedback, we are, I believe, going to be changing these to be larger text areas because there's often lots of details that some districts need to input here. Just for the purpose of demo, I'm going to keep these simple. But if you do have a complicated one of these, you can talk to us at the help desk for help entering it. You can also attach a project plan consistency supporting document that can have details as well.
One thing to focus on this for sure, and it's something we've seen some of the districts do. Remember that for this stuff, you don't care about the past, you just care about the future. So you don't have to give the entire history on this project. It's what's coming together now and what's the future of that.
And that's also noted, disregard providing historical details. For design build projects, can we change the phase? Not sure I understand the question.
For design build projects.
Reevaluation realm at that point.
Yeah, I mean that would be a reevaluation. That wouldn't be that wouldn't be a type 2, a new type 2.
Yeah.
And you can under reevaluation. Yeah.
And then there's another question in the tip stip box. Can you enter both dollar values? Typically, I've seen that done with the slash, so the tip dollar amount followed by the stip dollar amount. And you can put other characters in here. I'm just doing quickly for demo. And then again, tip stip fiscal year, you can use the slash to separate. Again, there is an attach point to attach supporting documentation for project plan consistency. Moving down the form, section for cooperating agency, and then the environmental analysis section. Here you're asked for each of these issues and resources, whether there are significant impacts, yes, no, or enhance or no involvement. And you'll put in the appropriate answer for each question. And then for the initial submittal, what OEM is asking you to do is to put enough information in the comment box to assist them with finding where that supporting information is in ERC. So you would refer to whatever the file is, and then typically a page number or range, and then you would go through and complete all of this, and I'll just quickly move through so you can see how you'd create a draft of this form. Under navigation, there's the USCG permit is not required or is required button. You select the appropriate choice, and then section E, engineering analysis support. You're asked to provide either a preliminary engineering report or an alternative analysis memorandum, one or the other, but not both. And then under anticipated permits, you can type that listing into the box. Under commitments, you can include, I believe we want the verbatim commitments from the PCR.
Yes, but they're not going to attach the PCR to this. So, and I can see that name has not changed on the attached. Yeah. That needs to be updated. So think about your commitments. The commitments should be verbatim, exactly what's in the PCR or in the environmental document, so that when you or supporting material, whatever it is, word for word. your PCR for the project should exist and be uploaded in the project file, but it would not be attached to the environmental document because it's not a part of the environmental document. It's an internal routing sheet so that we can pass the commitments from this stage into design and forward with the project. So the PCR should be uploaded and in the project file, but it should not be physically attached to the approved environmental document. What would be uploaded here is your commitments. What's listed there should, again, be verbatim of what the words are that we committed to previously. And then if you needed to have any supporting information for it, then you would add that as well. Are there plans to make the PCR in electronic form? Not at this time.
All right, continuing on, you go into the public involvement section. Here you're given 4 options. A public hearing not required, will be held, was held, or opportunity for public hearing was afforded and was documented on date. So you would select the appropriate option. With the one that, the second option, it will be held on date, you're asked to also answer the draft documents publicly available and comments could be submitted to FD&T until date, and then the district contact information where those comments can be submitted. For the ease of demo, I'm just going to say it's not required. There's a Save Draft button. Go ahead and save the draft. And then it gets into the signature. So we're on an initial submittal. We would not want to actually sign this form yet. That's going to be on before the request for approval. And so what we could do at this point, assuming we had filled out the form, the draft form, we were ready for the ERC initial review, we just click the PDF button. That will generate a PDF of the draft Type 2 checklist, and you can see it's got the draft watermark. It's got all the information that we entered on the form. And so that is what you would upload into ERC along with the draft supporting documents. You do not have to upload those draft supporting documents into SWEPT until you've gone through your initial ERC review, you've resolved comments. Then when you're doing the request for approval submittal, you would come back into this form, fill it out completely, apply all the comments, attach all of the updated supporting documents, and save, and at that point you would go through the signature process. And I can demonstrate that. Let me actually jump over to the EDS and show how you do an initial submittal. So just to complete the initial submittal, you go to Project Documents and you'd click on Environmental Document Submittal Form. I'm going to actually open it in a new tab. I just control-click the link, or you can right-click and open a new tab. And then I'm going to enter the FM number. Again, you can do this from the project page or from the menu. If you do it from the menu, you've got to type in the FM. And it's going to ask some questions. So what type of document is this? Very important, if the submittal is for a reevaluation, please choose reevaluation as the document type, even if it's a reevaluation of a type 2. You want to select reevaluation. In this case, we're doing the initial for the type 2, not a reeval, so we'll choose type 2. The submittal type, again, initial. The project phase, it picks up PD&E as the default here, but you can choose the appropriate phase, whether or not it's a lap project, the anticipated letting type, the contents of the submittal. For an initial submittal, it is just going to be a free text area for you to type in what's been input into ERC. Status of documents, this is going to be any discussion about pending issues, consultation, and or documents. Cooperating agencies are listed. You can see here we have U.S. Army Corps. It's going to ask the date it was sent the date the document was sent to the, or whether the document has been sent to the cooperating agency or not. If you say, whichever answer you reply, if you say yes, it's going to ask you the date sent. If you say no, it's going to say the date it will be sent. District quality control completion date, and then the district environmental lead. This is going to be free text. It picks up the project manager assigned to the project, and then finally you can save as a draft if you want to come back and complete the submittal later, or you can send for review. Again, I'm logged in as the PM, so it's telling me that if I send for review, it'll save and send this form to the district environmental manager and project development manager for review. I get a confirmation page, and then I can click a link to access the PDF. And we have a question. Can you clarify about the PCR form? You do want us to attach here in the tracker where the blue button is, right? No, I think we are actually going to be changing this and adding a note. You are not, you're asked to not attach the PCR here. Instead, attach it in the project file. And so that looks like
They'll see it correctly in the reevaluation form when you show that.
okay. Apparently we have it corrected in the reevaluation form, but not on the type 2. So, but in either case, for the type 2 or the reeval, you're asked to upload it on the project page under commitments. It will go in the project commitments record section, and not to attach it to the type 2 categorical exclusion. Despite what the button says, what you need to do is copy in the verbatim commitments from the PCR and attach the PCR on the project page, but not to the environmental document. On the reeval form, you can see it's got commitment status documentation. And I think that's the intended label for that button. Okay, because I've now done the initial submittal and sent for review, there'll be an email that went to the environmental manager and the project development manager requesting that they review and certify this submittal, and they'll have a link to do so. I will go ahead and click that link here, and I'll log in as the District Environmental Administrator. The District Environmental Administrator and Project Development Manager will have alerts as well as the email. Both of those will have links that take them to this form. You can see the form has an FM number link that goes to the project page where they can review the project files. They can look at the draft type 2. It's got a link to the ETDM latest published summary report, if there is one. It has all the details about the submittal. And then finally, the options are to certify the document is complete and ready for review or approval, or need more information. If you select need more information, you're asked for a comment, and that will send it back to the project manager to supply more information, or you can certify it's complete and ready for review or approval, and I'll select that option. And then when that happens, an email goes to the other party, in this case, the project development manager, letting them know, hey, the environmental manager has completed, now it's just waiting for your signature. It also works the other direction. If the PDM certified first, then the environmental manager would get a similar email letting them know that they need to certify, and that the next step is it will be sent to the OEM project delivery coordinator for confirmation. So we'll go ahead and do that. And again, same form, same options. And now it's been certified, and so an email will go, in this case, to Shireen, as well as her backup project delivery coordinators, letting them know that the submittal has been certified and it's ready for confirmation. And so I'm going to log out and click that link and show you what Shireen would see. And so Shireen gets a submittal confirmation page. She again has a link to the project page where she can view all the information about the project and the project files, ETDM number, a PDF of the submittal, and then her options are to confirm that the submittal is complete and ready for review. That will begin the ERC comment period, or she can return it to the district for more information where it will start the process over again. And then finally at the bottom, she's got the approval history to show her how it got to this point. And then finally, that submittal has been confirmed. Question, are there plans to use SWEPT for both the initial and request for approval so we don't need to use two separate electronic tools, ERC and SWEPT? No. All right. I'll just show you a sample email. OEM has confirmed this submittal. You'll receive this in the district that says the submittal is complete. Review will begin today. And you can go to the project page if needed. But at this point, the review takes place outside the system in ERC. And again, once time passes and that activity takes place, district receives comments, updates their draft documents, finalizes everything, and then comes back into SWEPT to complete the final document. So there you can either go to the project page and click Edit on the Type 2 checklist, or you can go through the menu, go to Type 2 Categorical Exclusion Determination Form, and key in the FM number. I'll just click Edit on the project page to save that step. Here's where we're going to update everything in response to the comments received. Typically, you're going to be entering some text in supporting information indicating where in the supporting documents to look for the information supporting this question. And I'll just show you a quick example of attaching a document. So I'm going to click Attach next to Noise. What it's going to do is it's going to pick up that I said I'm entering something for noise. And so the options are going to be limited to that. Browser's not cooperating. There we go. So I chose a file. And now because it was next to noise, it's going to ask me, is this the NSR, is this NSRA, or is this other supporting documentation regarding noise? I'll just say it's the NSR. Does this file contain information that supports other topics? I'll say no at this point and just hit Save so you can see what happens. Now we have a check mark next to the supporting doc and a link to attachment number 2, which is our file that was for noise. And now to quickly complete the form, I'm just going to choose a file and say that it supports all the other topics. When you say that a file supports other topics, you can go ahead and select either all issues and resources or just all the ones that are in the same category or individual ones. I'll just say all. Save, and now you've got check marks here next to each topic. You can see noise has 2, everything else has 1, and so we've now provided supporting information. Again, typically there would be some text in these fields indicating what page number or section to look in for the supporting information. And then finally, you'll save. And then once that's all been completed, as the PM, you will click the Submit button on the PM signature line. That will electronically sign. Well, first it'll run some validation. So it says, I've forgotten to attach the PER, or the Alternatives Analysis Memorandum. So I need to go ahead and complete that step. When I do that, it's going to ask, if you notice, to choose an existing file or upload a new file. This is going to allow me, if needed, if maybe I had already uploaded the PER to the project file. In that case, I could navigate to it. Because I have not, I'll upload a new file. So that's important to remember, because you don't want to be uploading the same file multiple times. If you already uploaded the file to the project documents on the project page, you can choose the existing file. Only upload a new file if you haven't uploaded it to SWEPT already.
Mike, that's related to a question we just got. Is there any problem with multiple files having the same name and attaching them?
I don't think there's any restriction on that.
Although I'd want to know why. Why would you have the same file name in multiple? Because you can already take the one file and you can map it to 10 things and say, this one file, the information from these 10 elements is contained in one file, and it would show up, it would be stored only one time in the database, and every time you wanted to see the information associated with any one of those 10 things you mapped it to, it all maps back to the same one file in the same one location where that information would be found.
She's not saying that. She's saying if she has a multiple, like say an agenda for different meetings and they just named it agenda, and can they attach that different file? It just happens to have the same name. Is it going to cause a problem?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it will. I still wonder. Because the file name would change. I mean, I'm assuming it's not the same agenda on the same day 30 times. So that naming convention would change based on each day that the agenda was uploaded.
So our naming convention would change it. So it would have a unique file name once it's on SWEPT, but it's theirs, like he just had test dot, and if he had 3 documents in different folders.
Yeah, there's nothing to prevent it. I would just think, what would be the business case for that?
And P, I just wanted to show, I've been using our pre-production server today because we have a lot of enhancements going on, and because of some of the development, I couldn't use Stage for everything today. But on Stage, you'll see under commitments the note about add the PCR to the SWEPT project file on the project page, do not attach it to this form. Use the text area below to enter additional information about the commitment. So that will be moving up shortly, but it hasn't quite made it to production yet. So just to highlight that. And now, I'm on the wrong form. So now we're going to sign, and apparently I have not filled in the boxes about let me try reloading the form. I think I got messed up on which tabs I was on. Okay, so I think it's going to ask me to put in the references. Finish doing this. Too many tabs. We'll try to sign it now. Also important, after you attach a file, you do need to click Save Draft. That will actually complete the upload process. And so now I was able to click the Submit button on the project manager line. You can see it has the project manager's name and the date of signature. And so what that has done is it has generated an email that goes to the district environmental manager letting them know that the project manager has approved the type 2 and it's ready for the district environmental manager or delegate to sign. And I am not currently logged in as that individual, so I'll do that. And this is what the district environmental manager would see, is the type 2 form. Any changes that are needed would require selecting need more information and sending it back to the project manager to complete. Otherwise, confirmed as a type 2 categorical exclusion, any comments as needed, and then submit. That puts the district environmental manager's name and date of signature on the signature line. And at that point is when you would go and do the environmental document submittal request for approval. So we will key in the number. The form is going to load with the data that was already saved there, which was for an initial submittal. It's been confirmed. You see this message at the top because we had some confusion in the districts about, well, actually what happened was someone was out. They got a message saying they needed to do something on the submittal. When they came back, that action had already been completed by their delegate, but they didn't realize it, and they sort of did the signature again. So we put this alert up here to be very clear. Where is this submittal at? It's already been confirmed by the OEM PDC, so there's nothing to do until you need to start the request for approval process. So all you got to do is just click the button. The button will just open up the form so you can complete that request for approval process. But again, that note is just there to prevent you from making changes until the intended time. And so again, we're on the submittal form. Here we're going to just update to request for approval. We get an additional question. Does the supporting public involvement documentation demonstrate compliance with the PIP? We'll say yes. The other difference with this form is it's going to ask us to choose the documents that are part of the submittal. And Pete described this earlier. So you can go through the project file, choose the